Hi, folks. I see people are joining us. We're going to get started in a couple minutes. Hi, everyone. We're going to give it about one more minute and then we'll get started. Thanks for joining us. Okay, I think we're ready to start. Thanks for joining us, everyone, this afternoon. I'm Luann Beninati from Let's Grow Kids, and we are pleased to present this session to you and welcome you here today. We are so fortunate to have Sharon Easterling, a trusted partner through our work with our national organization, Opportunities Exchange, who we work with regularly. Sharon will be leading our panel. Sharon's an expert on the use of technology in childcare businesses, and we're lucky enough to have her live right here in Vermont. And Sharon will be joined by Christina Goodwin, the Executive Director of Pine Forest Children's Center in Burlington, and Tammie Haslett, owner and operator of her own family childcare business in Thetford, Vermont. They're both going to share their experiences and the impact that the use of technology, incorporating it into their business practices, has had on their business. They'll talk more about this in a minute. I want to thank you all for joining us, and I want to thank Rhea and Maria from Let's Grow Kids, who are also here in the background to help us with any technology needs for this session. And before I hand it over to the panel, I want to give you a couple housekeeping details that I'm sure at this point we're all pretty familiar with. One is that please use the Q&A for questions, and we'll be able to manage them to allow for these questions to be answered and addressed. And the session is going to be recorded and available on sharedservicesvermont.org. It will also be available on the Let's Grow Kids website shortly after it's complete. That way, if you miss anything or if you want to share it with a colleague who is unable to come at this time, you'll be able to do that. I think that's it. I want to get us started. I'm going to hand it over to Sharon Easterling to start the panel.
Thanks so much, Luann. And let me just say that I'm actually a recent resident of Vermont. Most of my career was spent in Philadelphia as the director of an NAEYC affiliate. And so I really saw firsthand just how challenging it is to do the incredibly important work of early childhood education and run a business in a sustainable way. And so we're gonna talk about that challenge and how technology helps. But I just have to say that I've been living in Vermont now for 6 years. I retired here. I'm not doing a very good job at being retired, but I love Vermont. And I'm helping to add to our population because my daughter came to visit last summer and decided this was where she wanted to live. So now she's moved here with my 5-year-old grandson, and she's a special ed teacher very, very close by. So I'm doing my part to help build the population in Vermont, and I love it here. It's my adopted state. Christina and Tammie, why don't you guys just say a little bit about yourselves, and then I'm going to tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then in a minute, we're going to have you talk a little bit more about your programs. Tammie, you go first.
Okay. Hi, I'm Tammie Haslett. I live in Thetford and operate out of my home, and I've been doing that for 19 years now. And I currently serve 5 families, and I'm taking care of 6 weeks old to 10 years of age. So they keep me all pretty busy. And just to let everybody know, I do have sleeping kids that I can see all around me. So hopefully I won't have to attend to them during this event.
Great, thanks. Christina?
Hi, I run a program, Pine Forest Children's Center in the south end of Burlington. I've been at Pine Forest for 18 years, which feels like the blink of an eye. We have 64 families, and our children are 6 weeks at youngest to 6 years old when they're heading off to kindergarten. And I think we're pretty unique because we're like a play-based, nature-based program, but we're in a very urban portion of Burlington. So it kind of is like a weird conglomeration of all the things, big trucks, and then lots of nature around us, which keeps the toddlers amused. So that's us in a nutshell.
Cool, great. So let me just tell you a little bit about Opportunities Exchange in case you don't know. Opportunities Exchange was founded by Louise Stoney and John Weiser. Louise is really a thought leader in early childhood education on finance and you know, how to have a sustainable system. And so she's really kind of the mother of shared services. And so we kind of work in two arenas. We do a lot of work on the ground, helping people build shared service alliances and think about more sustainable business models. But increasingly, we are working more with in the government sector, trying to help shape public policy so that the things that providers need and are doing can also be supported by our policy and investments at the state level. You need to know that even though we talk about business and operations and finance all the time, it's all in service of getting better outcomes for kids, of really having developmentally appropriate, high quality programs that serve children and families, and a workforce that is equally supported with compensation and excellent working conditions that help them to do their best. I started thinking about what people needed to know, and what really became clear to me is, rather than me telling you why you should think about adopting technology or increasing your use of technology, how about, my screen's doing funny things. How about if we hear from people who have actually taken those steps and sort of learn from them what it's meant to their program. So here's our agenda for our meeting today. I'm going to have Tammie and Christina talk a little bit more about their program. They introduce themselves to you, but tell us a little bit more about their program. I want them then to talk about why they got interested in using technology or expanding their use of technology. How did they decide what software to use? Talk a little bit about cost and what they use it for. And then we're going to kind of finish up this part of our agenda with what's been the impact on your program? What difference has it made? And then we're going to have a generous amount of time at the end to do some back and forth Q&A. So that's what we have planned for today. So why don't we dive in? Oh, actually, a couple more slides to set our context. So as I alluded to just a minute ago, the work of being an early childhood leader means that you not only have to be an expert in education, but you also have to be an expert in business, because a quality program that isn't sustainable doesn't help anybody. But a sustainable program that's not quality is equally not helpful, right? So you've got to do this juggling act. It's nearly an impossible job. But when you're having to do everything manually and by hand, it becomes pretty impossible. Automation, the power of technology, though, can help rein some of that chaos in, if you will, and can help can help by allowing you to, rather than spending time on process, really being able to focus on people, being able to focus on understanding the data that you collect about your field, your business, and make decisions based on having that data. And some of you may be familiar with this concept Louise Stoney has coined, the iron triangle. In order to be a sustainable business, you've got to fill every seat. You've got to keep your program full. You've got to collect all the money that is supposed to be coming in, all the money that you're owed. And you have to have an understanding of your cost. Now, for centers, what that means is that the money you're bringing in covers the full cost of your program. For providers, though, for home-based providers, what that means is you need to have enough revenue coming in that you can really make this a career, right? That you have a sustainable wage that allows you to do this work in a way that you can sustain it over time. So I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen, and we are going to just have a conversation. So let's do that. All right, so let's dive in. So Christina and Tammie, if you would tell us a little bit more about your program. You already told us where you are and how long you've been doing it. Just sort of give us a little bit more of the contours of your program in terms of family served, your funding sources. You know, do you take subsidized kids? Do you participate in the food program? Any other things? What else would you like us to know about your work and your program? Christina, you want to start us off?
Sure. So Pine Forest, 20% of our families receive childcare financial assistance. So we're tracking attendance for CCFAP. All 32 of our preschoolers received Act 166 funding. So that's a lot of additional, that's 6 school districts that we're tracking attendance for all of those children. We also have I always get these two acronyms mixed up. We have a CACFP food program at Pine Forest. So we're also tracking meal counts for all the children every day for breakfast, lunch, and afternoon snack. So that's all data that is now compiled within the software we're using, which means a lot less paper, a lot less counting hours of numbers of hours they've been here every day for subsidy, and just streamlines the whole process because we're not worried about who forgot to sign that child out that day, how long were they here, how many kids really ate breakfast on September 29th. All of those little details are all compiled into like one concrete system that any administrator or teacher at Pine Forest can access. So it's really nice to have sort of a big overarching picture of what's happening here on a daily basis, for at least for data pieces.
Great. And how many staff do you have, Christina?
We have 21 teachers.
Okay, great. Thanks. Tammie, same set of questions. How is your program funded? Do you employ anybody on a regular basis? What else would help us understand your program better?
I actually don't employ anybody. It's just me.
Okay.
But I do take subsidy, and I am part of the food program as well. So I have to track the same information that Christina does.
Yep.
And I've actually done that via an app for quite a while.
Okay.
So
What app have you used to do that?
the first one that I used was called Daily Connect, but I'm part of a pilot program for Wonder Schools through Let's Grow Kids. So I'm making that switch over to that one right now.
Okay, great. All right, so we're going to talk more about your experience with technology, and I'm going to have you describe some of the things that you're doing with technology. But before we do that, I'd love to get your perspective on why were you interested? What was it that made you think that you wanted to explore technology, that you might want to automate more of your processes? What was the spark? Why did you think this was a good idea? Tammie, why don't you go first this time?
Well, I actually come from a background with technology. So I knew that there was a lot of things that I was tracking on paper that would make things so much easier if I could just track it using some sort of software.
Mhm.
But the other reason that I wanted to make that switch initially was because I knew there was stuff falling through the cracks in terms of keeping track of financial data, what my expenses were. And I wanted a system that I could easily get that information in there so that it was collecting it and building on it so that hopefully at the end of every year, I can essentially push a button and my tax prep is done. That's
Yeah.
the goal.
Yeah. I'm going to just probe with you just for a second more, because I think that one of the things that we've learned from Tom Copeland, who's right, kind of the guru of family childcare operations, is that record keeping for tax purposes for home-based providers is absolutely critical. And if you're missing, as you said, either any of your expenses or any of the time that you work, if you're not fully collecting that, you're leaving money on the table because you're paying more tax than you need to. So what more would you add about that? I guess I just said everything I was getting ready to ask you, but it's critically important. So I just love to have you sort of talk about that just for a minute more about how that work goes for you and how you manage it.
Well, one of the things that I would always tell people if they're going to do this is to develop a routine first so that you don't miss inputting key things. If you do that routine, you're going to have a better look at your data when you're done at the end of the year. I actually look at mine every quarter. And that tells me whether or not my expenses have gone up or whatever, and if I need to, consider adjusting my rates and that kind of stuff. So it gives me a better picture all year long, because you can grab that data and get the whole picture versus having all these little pieces of paper laying around trying to keep track of it.
Right.
And that's really, I think, the biggest benefit is being able to get the whole picture at any particular time of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so wise and so smart. Christina, from a center perspective, what was it that got you interested in technology? Talk a little bit about your journey, because I think you have a few steps along the way, right?
Yeah. So we explored being a pilot. I think it was for ProCare, probably 3 years ago. And we got like almost to the signing the dotted line and we're like, no, not for us. Like the thought of like having technology, be it tablets or phones or anything in the classroom at that point felt intrusive. It felt like it was going to be really distracting for all of our teachers to be like looking at that. And we also were sort of perceiving that like at that point, at least, children were already seeing their parents and probably older siblings on devices too much anyway. So we just didn't want to add to that at school.
Right.
But then, if you haven't known, this thing called COVID happened, and we spent 3 whole months communicating with children in our program like we are now through Zoom and recording ourselves on YouTube and all sorts of things that like sort of suddenly gave us this like weird confidence that we didn't have before with technology, and also just made us feel like, oh, there are ways to intentionally and meaningfully use technology in an early ed setting that can really benefit everybody. And so thanks to COVID, and officially a year ago, we signed up after a laborious process to use Brightwheel in our classroom. We left no stone unturned in the process, but we discovered that Brightwheel was the right match for us. And it has transformed life here at Pine Forest, both for the administrative team, for teachers. I think it was slightly harder for teachers to implement in the classroom, but I think looking back reflectively, like a year ago, what we were going to talk about at PD Day, compared to what we're going to talk about next Monday, is like so many more ways we're going to start using this technology. It's just improved us.
Wow. Yeah. So I'm going to throw a couple of topics out and I'd love for you guys to just like talk a little bit about that issue, right? So one of them is marketing and enrollment. If we think about the iron triangle and how important it is to keep your program full, has technology had any impact on enrollment or marketing, or like, have you seen any difference in how you approach that? And I know, Tammie, I know one of the things that Wonder School really has is, you know, they sort of start with marketing and the website and, you know, and making sure that your profile gets, you know, picked up when people do online searches. So I know there's that. I know there are online enrollment tools. So anything either of you want to say about that task around keeping programs full?
Yeah, I did not have a website, and that's one of the first things that Wonder School has us do. And I'm actually amazed at how much traffic, I guess is the way to say it, that website has gotten. I actually have had people find me through this website, and I currently have 4 unborn babies on my wait list as a direct result from Wonder School.
Wow.
So just getting that out there is just helping me out so much when it comes to my business.
Right. Cool. Okay.
We get between 200 to 400 what we call waiting pool applications a year for children to enter our program. And they used to be in this like 3-hole punch binder. And now they're all like neatly entered digitally into Brightwheel. And it says like who's had a tour, who's paid the fee to be in the waiting pool, how long have they been there? Like it's all sorts of data that's just automatically there. Nobody's looking for the binder and quickly leafing through it while a parent's on the phone. You're just typing in their name and it magically appears. So it's been a wonder and just the like organizational piece of that. And when the board asks how many people are in your waiting pool, I can very easily click a button and say this many. So
wow, that's awesome. So how about let's think about another leg of the iron triangle. Let's think about collections for a minute. I don't actually know if you are both using electronic payments and invoicing. So anything to talk about there?
We don't, Brightwheel has the feature to invoice and bill families at whatever rate, whether it's weekly or monthly. We don't currently use it just because we are so new to using Brightwheel in general and had a great financial system with QuickBooks that it was like let's not change everything all at once. But it is something that we consider for the future, but it's not something we're using.
But you are using QuickBooks. Parents can pay electronically though, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So we have the feature to pay electronically, and that's how everyone pays, but it's just not through our like CCMS system.
Yeah, and that's totally fine because you know, one of the things I want people to take away from this conversation is it's not, you know, there are a lot of different products out there, and the configuration that you come up with, the product that you use or products that you use and the way you set it up, there's no right way to do it. There's what's going to work for you given the goals of, you know, good financial management and strong parent engagement, right? So as we think about those goals, so actually, can you say anything about so I know you did this before you did Brightwheel, you started collecting money electronically, but can you just talk about the shift from collecting checks and cash to electronic payment?
Yeah, so when I took over as the director, we were already receiving electronic payments, but I know when I was the assistant director, our business manager at the time was running to the bank every 2 to 3 days, you know, photocopying checks, entering them all in manually to QuickBooks, you know, there was a lot of extra steps that went into that system.
Yep.
But now all of the invoices are memorized. So unless a family makes a change in schedule or changes their fee per month, I'm sending invoices once a month to families via email, and they're clicking a button and automatically paying, and it's feeding right through QuickBooks into our checking account. I can tell who hasn't paid, who's overdue. You can send reminders. And I love Brightwheel because the messaging feature is sort of like a Facebook Messenger or texting conversation. So I can automatically just text a family through Brightwheel and say, hey, I noticed that. You can also email them. So there's lots of features that just make hanging busy families and being like, hey, just in case you forgot, like tuition's 5 days overdue. But the automation piece just meant that like it was really easy to figure out who hadn't paid yet, who had paid, and suss out why they hadn't paid.
Right.
And it keeps track of, we also get subsidy electronically, so that feeds right into QuickBooks, as well as Act 166.
That's great. Tammie, are you doing any electronic collections?
I am. I didn't used to. I just started with this new Wonder School app that I'm
Okay.
using.
Okay.
And my family's, you can do a credit card or you can do an ACH charge. And all my families have elected to do the ACH charge, which they get a notification in the mail that, you know, the particular charge is going to happen. And I get an estimated date. Usually they're actually a little early in terms of when it actually hits my account now. So I know when the funds are coming, which is wonderful.
Yep. And pretty secure too. And we have found OpEx works with folks all over the country. And we have found that every time programs move from manual to electronic collection, whether it's an automatic pay, so you know, there are a lot of ways to set it up again, right? Like you can set it up so that families, you know, families can say, on the 15th of the month, my payment comes out. I don't have to think about it. Sometimes families are nervous about that. I've certainly lived with, you know, not knowing from week to week how much money I'm going to have in my account, right? I've been there. So it may be, you can set it up so a family can say, okay, now I'm manually clicking this button and sending it over. But either way, it has a really positive impact on how timely and how fully providers get paid. The other thing that people should know is that CCMS products get better every single month, every single year. And there's a lot of competition. So they're always working to improve what they do. So many of them have now built integrations with accounting systems like QuickBooks. Some of them, the integration is so close that you create a chart of accounts in your CCMS that corresponds to QuickBooks. And so when you get paid through your CCMS, it populates QuickBooks. But the other thing that happens is when a parent signs in, it actually reminds them if they're late on a payment or if something else is due, a message will pop up. So that, you know, Christina, that's something for you to just keep, like that would be a benefit to migrating over to using the CCMS. But anyway, so let's see, we talked about collections, we talked about marketing. Let's talk about family engagement for just a minute. Are you using your technology? You already talked about being able to message and email within your CCMS app. I know Wonder School has a really good system for doing that as well. So how does this impact? How do you use it to be able to share information back and forth with families? Can you each talk about that a little? So Christina, jump in.
Sorry, I saw Tammie on mute.
Oh.
So the reason we went with even using a CCMS in our program was because we were worried that families weren't coming into the building in the same way they were pre-COVID. And so we really wanted to find a way to build that connection between home and school and to feel like we were giving parents a window into our program every day. And so the piece that we love is that you can send photos and videos in the moment, like what's happening with children in the classroom, what are they learning? You can send messages. So right now we have a lot of infants who are new to our program. They're new to eating solids and purees. So teachers are able to quickly message parents and just ask like, hey, this is on the menu today. Have they had apples yet? So it's like in the moment, back and forth communication. It's also reminders. I don't know if anyone else sees to be the great notes about like your child needs diapers tomorrow that got buried in the bottom of a bag for 5 days. Like this is right there. Like parents, I'm a parent of 2 kids. Like I need lots of pinged reminders. So it's just a great way to connect with families, give them those reminders, help them feel successful as parents and feel like they're doing the right things. We're listening, we're hearing them, and there's sort of that back and forth. It does not replace those daily in-person conversations, right? Like we're still having them at drop off and pick up, but it sort of fills in the middle and gives a really good illustration of like what we hope to achieve as early childhood educators with that continuity of care, right? I take your child, this is how our day went, these are all the beautiful things that happened, I'm giving them back to you so you can continue to care for them in the way we as a team, view is best for your child. So it's been a really awesome opportunity. And I think it's also been really empowering for teachers to not have to rely on Julie and I as administrators to sort of have conversations. They have definitely over the last year gained more confidence in themselves to like talk about child development and say like, we're noticing X, Y, and Z in the classroom. What are you doing at home? Here's how we're supporting it. So there's just been so many beautiful like anecdotal moments of just teachers feeling empowered to have hard conversations and really amazing ones, either starting them within the app and then in person or vice versa.
Yeah.
It's
So
been amazing.
as a center director, how do you know what kind of communication, how do you monitor that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so when Julie and I were interviewing potential CCMSs, one of our questions was, what's our control? Like, what's our oversight? So Julie and I get to see and can see as administrators any message that goes back and forth between teachers to other classrooms or teachers to parents, which is good too, because we're also adding a system where, you're writing something, there's a lot to be interpreted in writing in terms of tone, like what did they really mean? So it's often helpful if like a conflict arises or a parent's like, I didn't like this, we can be like, I think they meant this. But it's nice to sort of have oversight and just to be like, why is this child out? Oh, somebody forgot to mention that they were sick today or what have you. But it's been really nice to sort of have like an overarching umbrella of what's happening day to day in our program.
And I assume that you also have a paper trail too, right? Like you also know what the conversations have been, how many times parents are being communicated with. So Tammie, I know that Wonder School has goals for how often providers that are using their system actually reach out to communicate with parents. And so I know that that's one of the values of the Wonder School product. Can you talk a little bit about how you're using it and share any stories with us about its benefit?
Well, it's very similar to what Christina is saying. I can do messages or emails, post pictures, videos. Didn't happen initially, but that's going to be happening if it hasn't already. And I use it to communicate all kinds of needs, just like needing diapers, whatever. And sometimes it's just, just to say, I'd like to touch base with you when you pick up your child. And so that they have that kind of on their agenda. Because sometimes, they might be running late or whatever, but if they know that they, would like to talk with me, they'll make the time for it.
Right.
So, but the other thing that's interesting that I just discovered with using this is that they have what it's kind of like a Facebook feed, I guess is the way to say it, so that it shows their day. And I've actually just used it because I've had a child that has been having some tummy issues. And so I use the same word all the time. And I wanted to see if the child was maybe eating the same foods every time he was getting sick. And I was able to find out that information because it was all in there. All I had to do was search on a word. And then I could, look at the different days and see what he had for meals and see if there was any, overlap on those days. So, and if I'd had all that information on paper, there's no way I would have found that. None.
Wow. That's a total new one to me. That's That's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happened to me yesterday. I was staffing in the infant room and there are 3 new babies to our program. And I did the same thing, Tammie. I went back through everybody's feed and was like, when do they normally take a nap today? Like, when do they normally have a bottle? Oh, every 2 hours. Okay. Like, it's a good way to like find patterns or
Wow.
know a little bit about someone's day, which is if I was filling in for that teacher and they weren't here, I would have just had to be like using my instincts and intuition to read their cues.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we have a new family who are new Americans who speak Swahili. And so we've been trying to figure out ways to communicate. And we just started using Google Translate to translate what we wanted to ask about the child into Swahili. And you can put it into Brightwheel and they can write back in Swahili and we can translate it back. So it's been a really cool new way. Like, it's just taken messaging to a whole new level in terms of
Kind of amazing. This is really kind of amazing. How cool. Wow. All right. So let's see. Let's talk a little bit about how you select a software product. So Tammie, I'm going to start with you, even though I know Let's Grow Kids is running a pilot. Tell us a little bit about, you know, what Let's Grow Kids is doing with Wonder School and kind of what you looked at in deciding whether or not this might be right for you.
Okay. I guess I'd have to start with the fact that I was already using a piece of software.
Yeah.
And the way I actually worded it in my application for Wonder School was I felt like I was making the software work for me because it wasn't working in the ways that it should.
Mm.
And so when I saw what Wonder School was all about, I felt like it was going to meet more of my needs.
Mm.
Those needs were just daily tracking. You know, I mean, we have to record diaper changes whether we want to or not. You know, but then there's also the finance side of thing. And then, and like you said, the parent engagement. And so I had to look at the whole picture with Wonder School. And to me, it felt like Wonder School was going to meet all of my needs. And I am so against paper. I want to get rid of it. So that was another thing, is like, just how much can I track in here and how easy is it to track it? Those were very important things. The fact that I can have something on my tablet or on my phone. I actually have a tablet in my bathroom. And when I'm done with diaper changes, I record it right there. I don't have to walk around with something in my pocket, you know. It's where I need it. And so for me, just accessing it, you know, how can I access it? All the different ways that I can use that piece of software. That was another, you know, thing that I weighed when I decided to become part of the Wonder School project.
Mm-hmm. So I think that maybe at the end, when we do Q&A, we'll have Luann talk a little bit about what Let's Grow Kids is doing and if there are opportunities for more home providers to get a part of that, to become a part of that project that they're doing. But that's really helpful to know. So do you have devices in different parts of your, like, what do you said you keep a tablet in the bathroom, and then do you like use your smartphone in other areas, or how does that work?
Yeah, I actually have a tablet that's anchored to my wall. When I'm all done cleaning, all I have to do is press the information and it's done. So when I walk out of there, I don't have to worry about making an entry, because to be honest, you can get sidetracked a lot in this business.
Yeah.
So to have it where you need it, and that's the last step that you do before you walk out the door.
Yeah.
It's priceless as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes, you know, when I'm out on the playground with the kids, I've got my phone. I can take pictures. I can send them right then and there. You know, videos, whatever, or I can send a message to a parent. So, and I do have another tablet that I happen to have on my kitchen counter. So when it's mealtime and the kids are all eating, I'm right there with them. I can observe them, interact with them, but at the same time, I can take and record all that information so that by the time lunch is done, everything is logged and I don't have to worry about it anymore. And that's really the way I operate, is that I want to have everything done in the moment so that I don't have to spend an hour at the end of my day trying to backtrack and get everything recorded.
So one of the things that you're pointing to that I want to make sure people understand is that one of the reasons that you can do that, you can do it from your smartphone, you can do it from a tablet here or a tablet there or a laptop here, is because you're using cloud-based software. Virtually every product that's sold on the market, there are only a few left that are what we call a desktop version, where you download a version of the software and you only use it on your device. Having cloud-based software, it's like Gmail, right? It's in the cloud, so you can use it from any device and from any location where you have a connection. Has internet been an issue for either? Christina, you're in Burlington, so maybe that's not an issue, but you're in Thetford. Has connectivity been a problem at all for you, Tammie?
So far it hasn't.
Okay.
And Wonder School is actually trying to come up with a way of working offline so
Okay.
that you can post all the entries, and then when you're back online, it will automatically upload.
Okay.
So that is actually in the works right now, is my understanding. Excellent.
Very good. Christina, I forgot what was the question?
How we
This is
chose what we
engrossing.
chose.
Can I just say that I will never do another webinar where I show slides and talk. From now on, I am only going to interview providers because you guys are telling me some amazing things. So thank you. So Christina, what would you add?
So I was just going to say, we had the opportunity to sort of choose our own adventure, I guess you could say. So Julie and I made maybe 14 criterion of what we were hoping the ideal software would have. And we spoke with 6 different companies and did their webinars where they walk you through their product and try really hard to sell you on signing up with them.
Right.
But in the end, Brightwheel sort of met all the boxes that we were hoping to fill.
Yeah.
And it has been the best match. So I would encourage people, if you're not being offered the opportunity to be in a pilot or, offered an opportunity for a free membership, I would spend the time, invest the time in finding what will work, because nothing would be worse than spending, usually it's a monthly fee, but they make you pay for the whole year.
Yeah.
Nothing would be worse than if you found yourself only using 2 of the 18 features and spending a lot of money for it. So it's really worthwhile sort of figuring out with your teaching community, what are you looking for? What are you hoping to achieve? What are you hoping it's going to do? And then finding the right match for you.
Yeah.
It ends up being, for the number of kids we have, about 100 to 150 a month, which when I calculate how much time I used to spend counting subsidy hours on my fingers every 2 weeks, or printing and remaking attendance sheets for all 6 classrooms, that is a huge cost savings for us, to be really honest. I, as the executive director, love that I can see everything on my phone. I can be at the grocery store and get an alert from a message from a parent that we might be hoping to hear from. Or when I'm on vacation, I can turn off notifications and not have anything to do with Pine Forest. So it's a beautiful way to feel connected to your job, but also have space. I love that my teachers don't see Brightwheel at home. So I'm the only one that can see messages when we're closed outside of Pine Forest. So they get to leave work at work every night when they walk out the door. So I love that piece. Brightwheel is a desktop and cloud. So there's certain features that only Julie and I can do on our desktop computers as administrators, but it is cloud-based. I will say a challenge. Yes, we're in Burlington. That does not mean we have the best internet. The baby teachers sometimes have a hard time connecting in their classrooms to Brightwheel and outside, but people bring their tablets with them and take photos outside of what the children are doing, exploring and learning, and then upload them during nap time. So we're still collecting documentation, but it's maybe not always in the moment uploads.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's worth doing the shopping around to find.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually wrote an article that I think is coming out in the next issue of Childcare Information Exchange, if anyone gets that that magazine. It's called Childcare Management Software, a tool you can't afford to be without. I think that even might be the subtitle of this, right? Like sometimes one of the biggest concerns people have is, I don't know if I can afford it. But if you think about the difference in cost of, you know, what you would spend on the software versus what you would pay somebody to do that. Now, part of the challenge, I think, is that often in our field, you know, you weren't charging extra for the hours over the weekend. You were just kind of sucking that up, right? So you could say, well, that doesn't cost us anything because people do it, except I think it does have a cost, right? If you have to constantly work over the weekend, you're going to come to a place where you say, do I really want to be doing this? I mean, do you want to talk about that? And I just want to say, Tammie let us know that she had to step away for a minute. So hopefully she'll be back, but we totally understand she does have the responsibility for kids. There she is. I wanted to share a couple of slides and maybe have you guys talk to them. So this is a slide that OpEx put together to sort of estimate cost saving, or rather time savings. And, you know, we sort of interviewed some people and said, think about the things that take up a lot of time to do. Payroll or HR tracking, tuition billing, tracking attendance. We worked with a newly created alliance one time, and they had a staff person who 50% of her job was doing attendance. It was going around in the morning and collecting the paper sign-in sheets, taking them back to her desk, sitting at her desk and entering attendance, you know, and that took all morning for her to do. And so think about the labor cost. You know, this was a person who had been working in the program for a long time, probably making $35,000 or $40,000 a year. And half of her time was spent doing something that there's actually absolutely no need for, because people could do that automatically. So anyway, I would just love to have either of you comment on the issue of time saving and what, you know, and what that means to you in your particular role.
I came in.
Yeah, go ahead, Christina, go ahead.
I came into this role as a leader with a lot of educational experience and absolutely no business experience. And it was sort of a trial by fire, right? Like, came the executive director, was taking all the business classes required for that role. And like over time, like it all started to click, but it didn't mean that it was taking me less time. And so this slide like perfectly illustrates how the last year has changed for me in terms of just these little things, in terms of what I was spending time on. Like, it has become fractional, and that means that my time is now really focusing on like where my specialty lies in terms of like the education, the, you know, the practice, mentoring teachers, supporting them in the classroom, being with children, and really seeing how all of these pieces are impacted when we have a high quality program. Just, I mean, this like clearly illustrates like the amount of time I spend. Like, I have had way more free time to be present than I did pre-COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as you were talking, I glanced down at the bottom there and I thought, wow, 48 to 54 hours a month. That's like adding a whole extra week of work, a whole extra work week every month. And if you could cut that down to a few hours, that's a real game changer. Tammie, I know that providers work is never done, right? Because you're probably, so what hours are you open, by the way, Tammie? How many hours a day do you have at least one child present that you're caring for?
It averages about 11 hours a day.
Wow. Okay.
Busy
So you could really benefit from not having hours and hours of work to do every night and on the weekend. You want to talk a little bit about how automation is helping with some of those things? You've alluded to it quite a bit already, but anything you want to add?
Well, the only thing that I was thinking of when Christina was talking about it is that one thing that other providers might find relatable is when you're part of the food program and the person comes for their visit and they want to take and verify the number of children that were in your care during the, a given week.
Right.
And they need to know the hours that the child was in attendance and, to compare against what we are saying we actually fed them.
Right.
Right. All I have to do is print out a report when she comes here. It used to be when she came here, I would have to take and give her the hours for each child every single day for 5 days out of the week. That takes a lot of time. Now I say, you want last week's? And she'll go, yeah. And I hit a button and the report's printed out and she sits at the table and translates the information. Now I have the time to spend with the kids that are here in my program rather than working with her. So it's a time saver, not just, for me, day-to-day operations, it's a time saver for her as well, because she's not waiting on anything.
Right.
And I use those features all the time. It's not just for printing, a simple report like that. I use it for all kinds of things. Even for parents, sometimes I'll take and do like, especially if you've got a family that the parents are not together and dad wants to know what's been happening. Well, if he's not somebody that wants to use the app on his phone, I can take and send him a weekly email that says, this was your child's summary for the week. And that saves me a lot of time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I use it a lot.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I know you just made me think that one of the things directors have told us is, parents often need statements of what they've paid, right? Either for their employer or at the end of the year for tax purposes. They need documentation of what they've spent on childcare. They don't have to ask you for that anymore because they're using a software app that allows them to manage their own account, and they can print, for any date range, here's what I've paid to my program. So that's completely taken off of your shoulders. I have a couple of other slides I wanted to just kind of pop up here and see if you want to comment on. So this is, these are actual numbers from a project out in Arizona where they worked with childcare providers who weren't using any automation. And in this project, they happened to use Brightwheel, which is what you're using, Christina. And when they got folks, when they got all their information loaded into the system, over the course of 9 months from January to September, this is what happened to their bad debt. It went from, the first column down to, in most cases, in many cases, under $1,000, significant drop in bad debt. Their collection rate went way up for all the reasons that we've been talking about. So we've talked about that a little, but feel free to comment. And I want to show you, did you want to say something, Christina?
Sorry, you think after all this time I know how to unmute myself. I was going to say that this is like sort of, when we started receiving automated payments, this is exactly what happened to Pine Forest bad debt. You weren't chasing people for them to write a check that they had forgotten to write 3 months ago. It was really clear. You could print out an analysis of, here's all the invoices we sent you, here's all the payments you received, and look at the gap. And so, whether it's, Brightwheel or Brightwheel in conjunction with QuickBooks, it really does improve the way cash is flowing into your program to sort of fulfill that piece of the iron triangle. It's amazing how much it improves business practice.
Yeah, the other thing I want to say, you just reminded me, is that it also keeps that paper trail too, right? So the single biggest issue about whether or not you're going to be able to collect money that's owed to you is how long that money has been owed. So that's why we get aging reports, because we want to see how old is the debt. So making sure that unpaid bills don't go month after month unpaid, because the longer it goes, the less likely you are to be paid. But having the data in your hands allows you to make decisions, right? Like sometimes you may decide because of a particular situation that you're gonna write off an account receivable, that you may decide, you work something out with the family where you say, how about if, we reduce your payment this month to this because I understand this, and, maybe I have a funding source, or you can make those kinds of decisions. But, it also allows you to look at trends. So if you have a consistent problem with a family over time, you may need to make the decision that you can't continue to serve that family, because not being paid jeopardizes other parts of your program. The key is you have the data that you need to make the decisions that you need to make. And that's very different from just a whole lot of people owe me money, right? Just really being able to have those specifics. All right, so let me show you a couple of other slides. Did either of you encounter any resistance from families on using technology? Any good stories to share about how families made that transition, and any feedback that you got from them?
The only issue that I had with transition was them trusting how the process would work for automatic withdrawal. But as each family jumped on board and word got out that, oh, this was easy, and you were notified that something was going to happen, that kind of thing, there was more trust in the system. And eventually they jumped on. I only have one family that hasn't jumped on. Everybody else is on board. The other thing I can say that has nothing to do with the paying of the bill, but is that when you get a new child into your program, parents have a right to be nervous, especially if it's their first child, and they're new to your program. So I tend to use the app a whole lot more, just taking random pictures, whatever. And the reassurance that those parents get because of that interaction that you have with them, especially during that initial time for them, coming to the program, it wins them all over. By the end of a week, they're thrilled and delighted that I use an app. Yeah.
So we have a question in the Q&A. Oh, Christina, did you want to say anything about parent? Okay, we have a question, and I have a slide. We have a question about child development tracking. So let's go there. So I have this slide that Christina actually shared with me. Why don't you talk a little bit about how the software also is used in the classroom around documentation and what you've seen as a result of that?
Yeah, so it's always been our practice to have a portfolio for every child, and that in the 18 years I've been here, it's sort of evolved from like handwritten notes on lined paper with photos glued on it to this. We would always encourage families to take home their portfolios, and it never really happened. So like we were spending a lot of time documenting learning, but it wasn't necessarily being observed by parents until it was sent home at the end of the school year. So Brightwheel gives us this really cool opportunity, or I'm assuming any CCMS, to sort of write those portfolio entries in the moment or when you have a free second during planning time, and sort of capture what you would have normally put into a portfolio, but here in their feed. And it stays, like Tammie was saying, a lot of CCMS have like a Facebook feed or an Instagram feed where you can sort of scroll up or down and look back at the history of things. So it's always available. This child's name was changed, but this is a really interesting moment in the young toddler room. It captured what Evelyn was experiencing in real time. This classroom was using a projector. And so her teachers were able to sort of document in quotes what she was saying in those moments, what she was exploring, and then also like why she was drawn to the experience. And this was something that was like captured on this day, but it was also captured multiple days after. So it was also an opportunity for her parents to see, wow, she's really intrigued by light and shadows. That's why she's doing that at home. Or even to see like how young children repeatedly go back to a learning experience to sort of build upon that meaning. So it was a really good moment for us to advocate for how play is building learning. It was a really cool way to document what Evelyn was learning in this moment. And it was, Brightwheel has a really cool opportunity, especially because we've all been a little disconnected, where Evelyn's parents also shared that they were sharing it with grandparents. So they can download documentation, photos, videos, and share them with whoever they want to outside of Pine Forest. So it's also been a cool way, like we send a weekly newsletter every Friday afternoon. And so now we have more grandparents and aunts and uncles who are asking to be on that newsletter to stay in touch with us because they're getting these beautiful observations and moments that are happening in the children they love classrooms. So yeah, you can also, downfall to Brightwheel is it does have, like you can see in the very tippy top corner, this was talking about repeat actions purposely and observing results, like as a science measure of learning or a learning standard. The downfall is that Brightwheel doesn't necessarily correlate with VELS or teaching strategies gold at the moment. Brightwheel is really responsive. So if you find a feature that you're really hoping to find, you can email them and they'll let you know like, oh, that's on track for the next like 6 to 8 months, we're adding that feature. So the downfall is we can tag certain learning standards within Brightwheel, but they don't at the moment align with Vermont standards that we're, probably tending to use in our programs, but hopefully soon they will.
Yeah.
But this has been really powerful. It's been powerful for parents to see that we're not just, letting their kids do whatever, and that we're actually planning meaningful moments, that we're advocating for what learning is happening in classrooms. And it's really been a great moment for them to see all the hard work that teachers, early childhood educators are doing here.
I had the chance yesterday to listen in on a presentation that Kathy Hirsch-Pasek did. She wrote Einstein Didn't Use Flashcards and How to Raise a Brilliant Child. And she's a serious researcher that talks about the critical importance of play and play-based learning. And you all know, I know everybody on the phone knows, parents and grandparents, people don't necessarily equate play and learning. I feel like this is a way that those dots are connected. When you can show kids meaningfully interacting with materials and others in the classroom and exploring, and then you can say right in that moment, and here's a skill that's being developed. It's really powerful. And Christina, you had shared with me earlier that it elevates the conversations that you can have with families about the education that's going on. I want to answer. Go ahead.
Can I say one more thing? I just saw a question.
Yes.
So you can also go through and isolate these moments. So these photos and these pieces of documentation, and you can still print them out like you can in Teaching Strategies Gold. So if you wanted to, you could have them digitally, but also send home like a 3-ringed binder portfolio at the end of the year with all these pieces of documentation. It just means you're not doing both. Like as a preschool teacher, nothing used to aggravate me more than I would write it in a portfolio and then rewrite it into Teaching Strategies Gold. Now you can do one piece,
yeah,
and then it can serve a dual purpose no matter how you want to function and use it.
Yeah.
So that's another really awesome feature.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm going to start responding to some of the questions. We're going to move into our Q&A time. Tammie, did you want to add anything about related to documentation or child assessment or any of those pieces?
The only thing that I thought of when Christina was speaking is that I just wanted to let people know that Wonder School is also very responsive to asking for requests.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I would have to say 9 out of 10 of the requests that I've made, they're either actively working on or their plan is to start working on it because they think it's a good idea. So
yeah.
I just want people to know that it's not, I think you'd mentioned earlier, Sharon, that these businesses tend to be pretty responsive. And I would have to say that I would agree with that statement.
Yeah. Competition is heavy. And one of the interesting things about early childhood is it's one of the last sectors to actually adopt technology. So before the pandemic, if you talked, so nobody tracks how much people use software and there's no sort of official way to do that. So, but the people who sell software probably have their finger on the pulse of the sector as much as anyone. And so before the pandemic, when OpEx would ask vendors, so what percentage of the field do you think uses automation? Their best guess was about 30%. And that was people who used any part of automation, right? We also know that people often will buy a product and only use a small piece of it, that they don't fully exploit all the benefits of it. So very low adoption rates. So here's why that's important, because there's this really large group of potential customers, and the competition right now for childcare management software vendors is pretty fierce. And that means they're motivated to have the best product on the market. So you should absolutely look for things that you need, ask for things that you need, and expect to get the things that you need. So we have a couple of questions. One of the questions was about when families pay electronically, either through QuickBooks or through one of these systems, what the fees are for them to pay. And we sort of started to get to that when we said, Tammie, you were saying your parents, I think, chose ACH because it's much cheaper, right? So ACH transactions usually cost less than $1, somewhere between 25 cents and $1 from everything that I've seen. Credit card companies slap a fee on. So do you each want to say what you know about that?
Yeah, Wonder School actually picks up the charge for the ACH.
Okay, so it's free.
So yeah, so it's free to both the families and me.
Okay.
I don't know about other programs.
Okay. Do you know what the credit card percentage is? I think it's generally around 2.5%, sometimes 2.4, 2.8, something like that.
Yeah, I think
it's
Wonder
definitely
Schools
under
was
3.
2.5.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And Christina, what were you going to say?
I think it's in QuickBooks. I think it's $1 per transaction. I'm pretty sure Brightwheel's actually less expensive for ACH than QuickBooks, but
yeah,
we just weren't ready to make the transition yet.
Sure. So, so ACH is absolutely the way to go if you're going to do electronic payments. Of course, sometimes a parent might not have cash on hand and they want to use a credit card. Hopefully that's not a regular practice because it is more expensive and then the parent's accumulating debt, right? But it's an option if they need it from time to time. So we talked about child development. So one of the questions is, how does Brightwheel talk with QuickBooks? Can you just talk a little bit about what your process was like, Christina, to send information between the two systems? Was that hard to do? How did you make that happen?
So QuickBooks has a feature called Update Web Services. So you can add different apps to communicate with QuickBooks. So for payroll, we use QuickBooks Time, which used to be T-Sheets. So there's different ways that you can add apps that then communicate with your QuickBooks to sort of share information back and forth. It was a moment I had to consult customer service in order to make happen, but it's been, I'm of the philosophy it never hurts to ask. So it's definitely doable. You just have to find the right people to help you get it connected.
Okay. So another question was, so we've been talking about the two products you guys are using, which is Brightwheel and Wonder School. And so Erica's asking, how do we find out what other products are available? That's a great question. So I typed into the answer, and Luann, you may have to help me here to see if I'm not sure if everyone is able to see the answer. I'm not 100% sure about how the Q&A works for attendees. But I did type in a website. So there's a website that you should know about that rates software by industry. It's called Capterra, CAPTERRA.com. You go to www.capterra.com. And if you type in childcare software, childcare management, it'll bring you to a page. that lists, actually now it's over 200 different products, and then you can filter it. Let me just shout out a couple of products that you may have heard about. ProCare. ProCare is the biggest product in the country because they've been at this the longest. I think they have about 30,000 users, and they're in all 50 states. ProCare has a new product so interesting little backstory. ProCare was around for a really long time. It was a really big desktop, sort of wonky, a little hard to use product. When Brightwheel released their sort of smartphone driven, really easy to use. Oh, and Wonder School, same thing, sort of mobile first, very easy to use on a mobile device, very intuitive. People started leaving ProCare and going to Brightwheel. And so ProCare folks said, we got to do something about this. And so they actually acquired an up and coming software product and had it and turned it into a ProCare product. It's now ProCare Online. So if you go to ProCare's website, there's a lot of good tools there to compare the two, but highly recommend ProCare Online. It doesn't have as much of the features that ProCare Desktop does, but they're building them and they're adding them all the time. It's a really good product, easy to use, very affordable. So ProCare is another one. SmartCare. Let's Grow Kids actually was funding folks to try out SmartCare a couple of years ago. Same thing, it's a mobile first technology. Who are some, if people want to type in other products that they know about or they're using in the chat box, we can share that. But I definitely recommend Capterra as a place to do some initial shopping. The other thing I would encourage you to do is to talk to your peers, see what they're using and what their experience has been. You guys want to add anything to that?
I know a couple of providers in Chittenden County use Tadpole, and I think it integrates with Teaching Strategies. I think it's a subsidiary of Teaching Strategies Gold.
You want me to tell you what I know about tadpoles?
Sure, I know nothing about them, so go for it.
So, so tadpoles was a product that was started in Pennsylvania, and so I don't know if they're still selling it as tadpoles or if they're using an old version, but tadpoles kind of merged with a couple of other companies. So primarily, what they do is the pedagogical work, and so they have now become under an umbrella of another company called Kaymbu, 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 which is actually, it's a weird name, but it's an excellent product. And so it's built off of core, High Scope's core Advantage child assessment, but it's also normed to early learning standards, to NACE accreditation, to TSG, to all of the major systems. So it's a very robust child. It does like lesson planning, observations, assessments, the whole thing. So that's sort of the path of tadpoles, not so much about operations. Anyway, keep going.
I was going to say there's Life Cubby, which I think is associated with Discount School Supply. I think we probably reached out to like 20 of those options from the Capterra website. Like that's where we got started. And the people who didn't ever respond, I was like, well, if you can't even answer my initial, like, I want to give you money email, then I don't think you're going to have the right customer service for me in the long run.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing I tell new families when they come for a tour here. Like you have to find, like, yes, totally ask your peers what they're using, why they like it, why they don't, but also like it's whatever fits the program culture you have.
Yeah.
So really spending the time hearing, making your priorities of what you want from the list. Like there was people I eliminated immediately from Capterra just based on like the descriptions of their product.
Yep.
So it's really about finding what's the right fit for your group and the children you care for.
Yep. So Jamie asked, how long does the software keep information for? I don't know if I ever asked that question. I guess that would be a good question to ask the vendor. Yeah, a very interesting question. Obviously multiple years, you know, So my guess is that they would probably warehouse it indefinitely. So you could go back and get all your records from the beginning. But it's a good question to ask. Let's see. Any other questions? Tammie, you got good sleepers there because you've been almost uninterrupted. Your kids sleep a lot better than my grandkids do, I'll tell you that.
Get them worn out in the morning.
Yeah, that's the thing. So Luann, you're rejoining us visually now. Do you want to say anything about the pilot, about Wonder School, or any of the other technology stuff that Let's Grow Kids is doing? This, by the way, this has been pretty wonderful. So
This has been amazing. And
Yeah.
as you say, boy, these folks, Christina and Tammie on the ground, they know. And it's so helpful to learn from actual users. And one of the things we found at Let's Grow Kids as we have piloted some of this technology initiatives is that it's what you just said. You really need to choose a program that fits for you, a software system that fits your program. And so if someone says ProCare is the best and it's not quite what you need, maybe Brightwheel is. It really, I think that is the point. One of the points that I'd like to make with this session is that we at Let's Grow Kids are not recommending any particular software system, because we found that as Sharon and Tammie and Christina have already said, all these software systems, many of them are very responsive. They offer support in very different ways. They have very different services. And one of the things we've heard from programs is sometimes these systems are too comprehensive, and that's not what we want in our program. We want simple, and then sometimes you want more. So it really is finding the one that suits your program. We at Let's Grow Kids have found working with Wonder School for family childcare programs to be really great so far. And we have a pilot with 10 family childcare programs working, as Tammie is, with Wonder School to develop the system. We do plan to do a pilot. Hopefully, we will be doing a second pilot coming up in the next year after January. So you'll hear more about that. And I also would like to say that we are pretty sure, and we will all be hearing soon, what the Child Development Division will be sending out in regards to how you can, what you can consider as you apply for the upcoming ARPA funds that will be coming from CDD to support your programs. We're pretty sure that technology will be one of the ways that you can spend ARPA funds. And so it's the perfect time to consider how to, what your program needs. Do an assessment of your program. What does it need in terms of technology, and incorporate it into your ARPA application. I also want to talk about, we have just launched to parents a system called Vermont Childcare Links, which is a marketing system, a very family-friendly, available 24/7 way for families to find childcare in the state. And Christina's program and Tammie's program are on Vermont Childcare Links. It also connects to Bright Futures information system so that parents can do a licensing regulatory search if they want to, but it's a way to market your program and also just promote your program and help families find childcare, because we know that families are not necessarily able to look for childcare at 10 o'clock in the daytime when there's a resource our referral specialist available for them. So we've got this new tool, Vermont Childcare Links. It has been launched. We have programs across the state. We are promoting it to parents now, and it is a very first step of use of technology that we want to recommend so that families know across the state where one place they can go. It connects for instance, in Tammie's case, her Wonder School website is what's on Vermont Child Care Link. So we're linking the systems and trying to make a one-stop shopping kind of place. What else?
We have a question. When is the ARPA application going to be available?
Well, again, that's from the Child Development Division, as we all know, and we're Let's Grow Kids. So we don't know for sure. We think that it will be coming. We've heard in the next couple of weeks. Child Development Division will be getting in touch. The application process will be coming out within a couple of weeks, with hopes to start implementing it in November. That's what we've heard. I am not speaking for CDD. It certainly is not what I can do, but we've heard that they're almost ready. So yes, and they will detail what the application can cover, what you can spend it on.
So Erica has a question. I would love to see what a parent sees using Wonder School and Bright Wheel. So, what you might want to do, I don't think I have any screenshots at the ready, but what you might want to do is, if you go to their website, Erica, you go to both of their websites, they will actually have screenshots that show you what a parent sees and also what the provider sees. But once you do a little bit of research online, then you're going to want to reach out to 2 or 3 different companies. I will say, I'm not sure, Erica, if you're a home-based provider or a center. Wonder School, at least at this point, is a better fit for home-based programs. They're building some functionality for centers, but I don't think they're quite there yet. So
they actually, in a few states, they are working with small licensed centers.
Okay.
But in the work that we've been doing so far, it's just been family childcare.
Yeah. So once you get a short list of, say 2 or 3 products that you're most interested in, all you have to do on their website is just reach out and say, I'd like a demo. Some companies will say, we do online demos once a week on these days at this time. Some will schedule an individual demo for you. So it just depends on the company and where they are and what's going on. But those are very easy to access. And then you get a much better feel for how they operate. And someone else asked about, are there any other pilot programs like what Let's Grow Kids is doing for Wonder School? And I don't think there's anything else that I know of, but some of the products will give you a free trial period. So you can actually download the software, put some records in, see how it works, see how you like it before you have to pay anything. If you do that, though, you've got to be sort of committed to actually taking it for a test drive, right? It's like if they brought the car over and put it in your parking lot and you said, oh, I can't get to that yet, they're going to come and pick it up and take it back. So you've got to sort of be willing to commit some time to try it out. But it can be a really nice way for you to learn the ropes a little bit.
And I want to put a plug in. Christina put in the chat box, but remember to go to sharedservicesvermont.org under their discounts, because they do sometimes offer discounts. And the other thing that I've seen communities do is programs could work together. Say if you're in an early childhood network or in a shared services network, and contact a company, one of the vendors together. They'll do a presentation for a group, and you can do that in a network kind of approach. And we have a couple places that have done a little bit of that. And in terms of marketing and using Vermont Child Care Links, we have one region that is has an operating shared services network, and they have listed as the contact person for each of the member programs, the coordinator of the shared services work that we're doing. And so they're working toward a shared wait list within their community, which really, again, is another step toward taking administrative details off the plate of individual directors and family child care providers, and making it a system-wide support so that you have more time to focus on the children and families.
Right, right. I guess I should put a plug in for the OpEx website also. Just because we have can you tell, I think this is an important issue. If you Google Opportunities Exchange, you'll find us, but it's opx.org. So oppex.org. And we also have a lot of documents. Actually, I'm getting ready to update some of our childcare management software documents to try to create some more user-friendly pieces for people to access. But we have documents in there about, what is a CCMS and why does it matter and where do you find resources and, how do you begin to onboard with the system? So feel free to check those out as well.
Sharon, did you have a slide with contact information on it? I can't remember.
I do. Yep, I do. You want me to pop that?
Well, and I'd love to mention that Let's Grow Kids has community support specialists in each region. Many of you know who they are. And if you have some interest in a possible upcoming Wonder School pilot, you can reach out to your local community support specialist.
Yep.
And you can always reach out to me at luann@letsgrowkids.org.
Right. And so I'm actually Sharon Easterling at Gmail, but if you go to our website, there will be a contact us page and you can email me through that, or you can send a note to anyone at OpEx and it'll get routed to the best person to answer it. So that's our website. Actually, I think that, I don't know if that's right.
It is easy to Google it. Just Google Opportunities Exchange.
Yeah, I kind of think we're opx.org right now, but anyway.
Yes, Vermont Childcare Links, you just, again, Google that, vermontchildcarelinks.org, and it will pop right up. And if your program is not listed on it, now is the time to do it, because we are promoting it through pediatricians statewide, as well as through social media around a convenient 24/7 way for families to find childcare in their region. So now's the time to do it.
Make sure people, someone just asked a question. You're spelling links, Lynx.
Like the animal.
Yeah. So Jamie, make sure you type Vermont Lynx in Google and it'll bring you there.
Sharon and Christina and Tammie, thank you so much for this. This has been so much information. And again, to folks who are still on, we really want you to reach out to Sharon at Opportunities Exchange, reach out to me at Let's Grow Kids. And I know that Tammie and Christina would probably be happy to answer questions too. And I can always direct information to them if you don't have their contact. So our goal here is to have you folks who are the professionals who should be spending as much time as you can supporting children and their families and your staff, especially now when it is such a difficult staffing time in our work. The more we can give you time to spend on that and less time dealing with these administrative tasks, the better we all are. So that's our goal. And I feel like you guys got us a long way there with this great information and lots of good tips. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks, you guys. It was good to be with you. Bye.
Have a good afternoon, everybody.